we know where Ellis comes from on my side of the family.
Is it Florida?
I told you this, Florida.
But is that's where it starts? I just knew.
No, so my grandfather was actually Dominican.
Oh, okay.
It was a sugar plantation that was owned by an Irish family with the last name Ellis.
Dang.
That's how it goes. That's how far it goes back. But he moved to Florida when he was a kid.
Okay.
He did not know his father.
Okay.
My great grandma was his father's jump off, or whatever.
Not a jump off.
Whatever. So basically, and that's how we got here. And so he was sent away. She was a student.
Oh.
He was a principal.
Okay, so what you're telling me is if there's some Irish Dominican situations, we could actually be related.
Could be.
Okay. I'm Imani Ellis, and this is CultureCon Uncut. So today, I have the pleasure of talking to my amazing friend and fake long-lost cousin, Jay Ellis. Since he was a child, Jay has always loved storytelling. Born in Fort Sumter, South Carolina, to a military family, Jay spent most of his childhood moving from town to town, but his curiosity stayed consistent. And after college, his passion for storytelling led him to Hollywood with a breakthrough role on BET's The Game, period. But since then, he's gone on to win an NAACP Image Award for playing one of the most infamous boyfriends in television, Lawrence on HBO's Insecure, alongside the one and only Issa Rae, and appearing with Tom Cruise in the Oscar-nominated film Top Gun: Maverick. Hey, Jay.
What up?
Welcome to CultureCon Uncut.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Listen, I got to thank you. I got to thank you for writing this book. So you have this book. It just came out. Did everyone have an imaginary friend or just me?
Yeah.
And you know what it made me really think about?
What?
Is I'm someone who rushes to like action and do, but this book made me think about the importance of imagination.
Yeah.
Like really like visualizing your life.
I love that.
And you had an active imagination.
Very active. I still have a very active imagination, I think. Yeah.
And I read, it started with some green eggs and ham. So can you take us back to the beginning? What was going on?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought I would write a book. And I don't think my relationship with reading was one that started, but I didn't pursue a relationship with reading. Maybe let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like most people, like reading was something that was put upon me, usually in school. But my mom, every summer, when I would go to my grandparents, my parents were super young and just starting out and couldn't afford childcare. So they would send me to go be with my retired grandparents every summer. And they would watch me. And my mom would send me with like a couple of books. And she would tell me that I had to do a book report. And this started probably when I was like 7, 8 years old, maybe even 6, probably as I was really starting to learn to like read and write really well. And basically like I would do 1 book a summer. And then when I got older, she'd make me do 2 books a summer. And then when I got older, she made me do 3 books a summer. And then by high school, it was out because I was playing basketball and my summers were crazy. But my mom just had this obsession. She was a book lover. And I think she wanted me not to regress in the summer and to be learning, but also B, I think she just wanted me to like tap into her love for books. And then that fell into like, I would read books in middle school and in high school and in college. Like I always found myself at a library or at a bookstore. Like that's where I loved to study. That's where I loved to like disappear where nobody could find me. And fast forward years later, I don't know. I was just sitting around and started thinking about these stories. And I was like, I'm going to write a book about my childhood.
Yeah. And so it's COVID. You said you were baking a lot of bread. What kind of bread were you baking?
Man, I did an olive loaf that came out trash.
That's classy.
I tried. Yeah, but it wasn't very classy. It was very trashy.
Not trashy.
I did an olive loaf. I did a banana bread, which was dumb because I don't even like bananas. So I don't know why I did that. During the pandemic, as an actor, I wasn't able to go to work. We didn't have the protocols to be on set. And I found myself just needing to like scratch that creative itch that I have in some way. And so that started with like baking bread. And then it was like, I'm going to do Duolingo. And then it was listen to some podcasts. And it was read some books, watch some movies, some TV shows. It was all these things that I really realized were me just trying to like find something deeper and something to connect to. And my mom is like the keeper of records and pictures and stories in our family. And I was down at her house in Inglewood and flipping through all these pictures. And my childhood was just like flashing back through my eyes. And with every single picture, I would remember a moment. And then my mom would chime in and be like, oh my God, boy, that's when you know what I mean? Whatever, whatever, whatever. And my dad be like, yeah, he sure did, didn't he? I saw him do it. And so after that, I was like, oh, I wanna find a way to like write these stories and also honor my family and the village that raised me and the cities I raised hell in, and this like love letter for me from like the 80s and the 90s. Like it's very much like I feel like I got to grow up at such a special time and a chaotic time, but it formed who I am today.
Yeah, and I'm so jealous because I want to talk about Mikey.
Yeah.
You meet Mikey, it's raining, it's a thunderstorm. And I read that 65% of kids by the time they're 7 have an imaginary friend.
Yeah.
I never had an imaginary friend. I'm really missed out on that.
You in that 33%. Dang. You was too busy trying to be grown.
See, I should have slowed down. Dang.
But you know, the broader definition, I'm gonna give you an out. As I did all this research, what I realized is the broader definition of imaginary friend is if you project a personality into an object, a toy, a pillow. If you see a person or a dinosaur or a robot or whatever it is, if you project some kind of personality into that object, that is also considered having an imaginary friend. And a lot of us do that as children. We may do it younger and we don't remember it, but a lot of us do that. That's why that number is actually so high.
When you said you moved around a lot, you moved around a lot.
Yeah.
12 schools. And is that right? 12 schools in 13 years.
Yeah.
Oh,
my dad was in the Air Force, and my parents grew up in the Air Force. So I think that like bug to move was just in them. Therefore, that's what they knew, right? Like by the time they came around to having a kid, that's what they do. And then my dad got in the Air Force, so that had us bouncing around a bunch. And, you know, with every new situation I was being thrown into, I was constantly in search of like a new friendship group and trying to understand the social norms and the language even, because regionally we do speak different.
Yeah.
And so my imaginary friend, Mikey, was kind of there to help me through all of that. He was like this big brother that I always wanted, who was kind of there to guide me for good and bad through some of those situations.
No, absolutely. And I just love kind of like his commentary. Like you talk about your parents being in the next room and he's explaining wrestling and first kisses and all of the things. And one of the things that I really loved was that he taught you how to trust your instincts.
Yeah.
So I guess today, like, what does that look like for you in terms of trusting your instincts?
Yeah, I think it's a thing that we refine, right? I think the body will tell you. The mind will tell you, know, not to get like crazy scientific about it, but if you go back to a time where like we were hunting and gathering, all you had was instincts. Like your body would literally say, oh, something is not right. This is not where I'm supposed to be, right? Yeah. And then that translates a message to your mind, and then you think that thought, right? Like that is what our instincts are. And I think when fast forward, you know, when you turn down a street, you're not supposed to go down. Mm-hmm. You know what it feels like to be out in the middle of the night and it's dark and you like, I'm not sure if I want to go that way because the lights are out. Like, you know, your instincts are kicking in and they're telling you things. And I think that is, you know, that changes depending upon your life circumstances, where you live, how you live, what you do for a living. I think my instincts are something that I'm constantly, hopefully anyway, constantly tapped into, because as an actor, I try to use my instinct to make choices on a piece of material that I've been given, how I think this character who's had their lived experience would react in any given moment when they're faced with a situation. And so I think that it's something that is constantly refined. I think your business acumen is something, and your instincts and how you think and how you create and how you grow your business, and also how you engage with like young Black people who like haven't had platforms like this in our lives before, where we could go and feel seen and also feel entertained and also feel educated and also feel inspired. Like your instincts on how you built this business and how you've built CultureCon, like how you've built this empire.
Jay, stop.
I'm gonna call it an empire, but like it comes from being learned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It comes from being learned. It comes from understanding what people who look like you didn't get, what they needed, what they wanted, what they responded to, and then that just starts to grow over time. And I think it's something we got to listen to more often. I always say, like, whatever your gut says, whatever your first thought says, a lot of times, it's the one.
It's true. And I saw like the gut is connected to the
Brain,
brain. I mean,
yeah.
it's all there in the body.
Yeah.
Like you said, the body keeps the score.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I was really thinking about when you were talking about things that we didn't get as children. As Jay today,
Yeah.
what would you go back and give Jay?
Ooh.
What would you give him?
Ooh. Being an only child and constantly moving around, I think the thing that I always strived for was to be grown. I was like, man, I can't wait till I'm 16. I can't wait till I'm 12. I can't wait till I'm 18. Whatever it is, I just always wanted to be grown, which I think leads you to rush through life and not experience the journey. And as a kid, it's very hard to explain that. But I think that's the thing that I would want to go back and tell myself is like, you can enjoy the moment that you're in, these moments that you're going to be in, and like just be in them and be present and know that they'll pay dividends for the person that you're going to become in the future. And I think I spent so long just trying to be grown that didn't really sink in for a while.
That's so good because it's applicable today.
Yeah, it is.
In terms of like, oh, my life is really going to start when.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's now.
And by the way, that thought that we have as adults. I remember being like, man, when I turned 30, they don't even know. And like now I'm like, well, why did I have to wait till I was 30? Like I could have just did it then.
Totally.
Why did I have to wait? And I think that thought comes from childhood, right? Like you're going to be a big girl? You're going to be a big girl? Come on, you're a big girl, big girls, right? And I think like that thought comes from such a young age. And then when you talk about Black folks, like there's obviously, or people of color in general, there's adultification. So like that jumps you forward in a completely different way. So I think we don't even realize that it's happening to us when we're young. And then as we get to adults, we still have that same thought process, but we don't even really know where it comes from.
And you said being a kid, especially a Black kid and a Black boy back in the day was confusing, dangerous, fun, and alluring. To be afraid and intrigued at once was ordinary. There's so many examples where you're talking about moving through the world and kind of all these different schools and socioeconomic situations. How did you carry that with you? I mean, Blackness and still being an individual and all of these things working together at once.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that we know. I think it's just, it's this other thing of like, when you're introduced to different things, then you see different career paths, different lifestyles, different socioeconomic background. You see all of those things, but like when you're in it, you're just in it and you don't really know anything else exists. And I can remember, for example, loving a cookout with my cousins and my family in Youngstown or in Stockton. And I knew that like a radio was going to be there. I knew that somebody was going to be playing spades or dominoes. I knew there was going to be barbecue. I knew one of my uncles was going to give the longest prayer you have ever heard over food in your life. You might pass out. Like I knew those things were going to happen, but I could also remember being like, but I wonder what New York is like. I wonder what Miami is like. I can also remember seeing something on TV and like wondering what that world was like. I think that curiosity is really the thing that like probably helped me carry all of the things that I didn't know I was carrying. Because I think if we allow ourselves to constantly be curious and question what life could be like, what it could be like over there or over here, or what my life could be like, or what this moment could be like. I think as long as we allow ourselves to be open and curious, all those other pieces are just a part of you, and they fall in where they're supposed to fall in to help you make the decisions and go on the path that you're supposed to go on.
Curiosity, I really believe, is such an underrated superpower.
For sure.
It's like, I mean, the open-mindedness, the imagination, like Are you someone, I'm so curious, I always ask this question. Are you someone when you sit on a plane, are you curious about the person sitting next to you?
Always. I
Yeah.
haven't watched a movie on a plane in I don't know how long. If I do, it's because it's a very long flight and I'm like, all right, I stopped thinking about everybody around me now. But like even at an airport, like I'm the person, like I am a people watcher. Like I love being out and seeing people. And I'm so curious what they having a conversation about, what they having an argument about, why he on the phone yelling to somebody, what this waiter is about to do after work. Like I'm just that person who's I've always been like that. And I hope I stay like that. Like I always joke with my friends. I'm like, if you know everything, then why are you here? Like if there's no more growth for you, and if you know it all, and if you're like, well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm like, that's all cool. It's not to say that you haven't achieved, but like there still has to be an openness to the people in the world around you. Like the world is such a big place. The Black experience is so big and so vast.
Yeah.
The United States is so big and so vast. And if you're not just curious about yourself, your culture, your city, your world, like I'm not sure why you are even here.
It's just boring.
It's boring.
Like the world becomes so small
Yeah.
when you're not curious.
Yeah.
It's so predictable. You also mentioned the book, and I don't know if you're cognizant of this. You talk about birthing order often. Like you'll mention people and you're like, he was the youngest.
Yeah.
She was the oldest.
Yeah.
You're an only child.
Yeah.
I'm the oldest of 4. I know some people are zodiac people.
Yeah.
I believe in birthing order.
Yeah.
And I mean, how has being an only child shaped how you see the world?
I mean, listen, it threw my imagination into overdrive with this imaginary friend for sure. But I think I will say this. I'm very I had a very unique experience. There were multiple times where I had different cousins that lived with me, aunts and cousins, or even just straight cousins that lived with me and my parents. So there were often times where there was somebody in the house. There were plenty of times where there were not, and there were plenty of times where there also were other people in the house. And also I have so many cousins, and when I would go away every summer, I was always surrounded by those cousins. So even though I was an only child, it never really felt like it felt like an only child when I left them. It felt like an only child when one of my cousins moved away and wasn't living with us. That's when I really felt like an only child, especially as I got a little bit older. When I was younger, that's when I was primarily by myself and I didn't know any difference. It's interesting though. Like now I always am like, oh, I see that quote. You see that quote? Only children ain't more selfish than anybody else. Like only children, I read all the quotes. Anytime it's a only child quote, I read all the only child quotes. I will say I like my space. I'm a sharer. I'll give you anything. But what I like is if I'm in the bathroom, you can't come in the bathroom. Like if I'm brushing my teeth, I don't need you standing next to me brushing your teeth. I want that's my sanctuary. Like little or little things like that. Like I think that's the thing where I'm like, space is the one thing that I'm very much an only child about.
I want to pivot, and I actually want to talk about birds.
Yeah.
Because
Terrified.
I learned you're terrified of birds.
Terrified.
You're terrified of birds, and I want to talk about this time where you're going to Venice Beach with your grandparents, and the birds they're birding.
They're birding. That's what birds do.
That's what birds do. And your grandmother kind of plays a little joke on you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that? Because what I extracted from that, I took it to a whole deeper level. That bird story.
We call her Grandma Gigi now, but Babs is also her nickname. My grandma Barbara, my dad's mom. My grandma was like, we got to take a road trip we going to Long Beach, baby. We going to go see your uncle. We going to go to Disney. We going to go to Venice Beach. We going to take you up to go see the Walk of Stars. We did the whole thing.
Nice.
It was like, it's probably my first trip to LA, actually. And the night before we left, I fell asleep after watching the movie Birds, Alfred Hitchcock's Birds. And if you have not seen that movie, now you would probably laugh at it because of the special effects. But like they used real bird. They trapped this woman in a phone booth with real birds. And these birds actually attacked her. Tippi Hedren, the actress. Alfred Hitchcock is a genius. He's the genre-wise a master, and the entire genre is almost derived from most of his films. But as a little boy, it terrified the hell out of me And the next day we get up and we drive. The next morning we wake up early and we drive down to Long Beach, and we end up going to Venice, and we're out on the beach, and these birds, these seagulls, start to flock around as my grandma's like opening up. You know, like my grandma used to walk around, like they always had plastic bags of chicken, plastic bags of fruit, so they open in the Ziplocs, and as they're opening the Ziplocs, all these birds start coming around, and I'm terrified. Like I freak out and like start crying, and my grandma, and I'm a little boy, and my grandma at the time, I say to her, like, why do they like jut their necks forward? And my grandma says to poke your brains out or something like that. And I lost it. I was on that beach crying like they stole my puppy. Like somebody took my candy, all of the above. Some Mikey ran away. I was sitting there crying, and she was just playing a joke. She was just trying to be funny and play a joke, and didn't know that it would still bother me. I don't like birds. I will cross the street before I cross a bird's path, especially if I'm in New York and it's a pigeon.
Oh.
No, I don't do that.
Oh. And then at the end, you say that you stayed and you shoot them away, and you realize that you could face something that you're afraid of.
Yeah.
And I just love that, because I really want to talk about the relationship with fear. And I know people are like, oh, if it doesn't scare you. But fear is very real.
Very, very real.
What does your relationship with fear look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think from that moment, to your point, like my grandma's whole thing was like, first of all, you're bigger than the birds are afraid of you, which I very much can rationalize today. Like I fully get that still. Yeah. They also animals. They don't know what they're going to do. They just react.
Unpredictable.
Yeah, they unpredictable. But I think I've had a lot of moments like that growing up where like to this, it's interesting. Like I love horror. I love genre films. Like I could watch them all day long. Don't have nightmares. Could watch them at 2 a.m. Could watch them at 1 a.m. Could watch them at 1 p.m. Doesn't matter. Doesn't bother me. I could keep it moving. I find that fear, though, I do believe is this big crippling thing. And I think once we realize the things that we're afraid of, which could be afraid to get hurt, could be afraid to be vulnerable. It could be afraid of success. It could be afraid of failure, whatever those things are. I think when you can identify what you're afraid of, I do think part of the work that you have to do is now dive in and find out why are you afraid of those things? And then how do you release that fear? Because I do believe like there's other things where I'm wildly I'm fiery. Like I'm so far from fearful to write a book. I'm so far from fearful to move to Los Angeles and figure out how to be an actor. I'm so far from fearful to like go to a piano class and sit there and at my age look like a dummy when I'm like, I want to learn how to play piano. Can you teach me how to read music?
Yeah.
And my dude is like, I mean, I teach kids, but yeah, I could teach you too. Sure. Like, I think we have to figure out how do you master fear? How do you own fear? And because it really doesn't serve a purpose in your life. Like, I think instincts, I think being fearful of being out, let's just say in the middle of a night in a desolate place with no light is a very rational fear. Like that is a very rational danger. You could potentially be in danger.
Right.
Those are fears that I think are real, and those are survival fears. Those are instinctual. I think being afraid of like love, that comes from something. Commitment, that comes from something. Failure, that comes from something. Success, like being afraid of your own success, that comes from something. And I do think that it's part of our work to go figure that out and figure out our why, and then find a way to own it and not be afraid of it.
Now, we've talked about fear of failure. I've heard that often, but fear of success.
Some people don't. You don't think so?
Wait,
man, I've seen so many people, and maybe it's just because I sit in this. I think no matter what, though, I think even if you sit in the corporate world, if you sit in the business world, like I think you can look and say, I think you can know that you are at the precipice of something. And I think people often will make decisions that may feel irrational. They may feel unexpected. They may feel contrary to the success that is on the other side of that precipice. And I think a lot of times, I think that that decision making, at least in the folks that I have seen, comes from fear of success. Because with fear of success means the failure is greater, right? If you succeed, the failure could be wild. The fall down could be much further down. I could just be comfortable and just be right here.
Right.
Right. This is kind of cool. You know what I mean? I can just hang out right here and nobody's asking too much. I got a good life, whatever it is. But if I go for this thing, that means a couple things. I have to commit to it. I have to study for it. It has to be the only thing I see and the only thing I think about, right? It has to consume you to some degree while still having a life, but like it has to be your central focus. And also, if I get it, what if it's not what I thought it was going to be? Or what if I get it and then it's pulled away from me? And then again, that fall down, that failure is bigger. Or it's this feeling that like, yeah, but they gonna get, if I get it, like it's not even gonna be real. Like it's gonna be kind of like, and I think that fear of success is a very real thing. And maybe it happens more with artists. I don't know, but I think it happens across the board.
I think you're right. And I don't think people are I mean, it's the self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage is huge.
All of those things, because to your point, what if it doesn't work out? What if it does? And I did read that, our mind is made to be comfortable, not happy.
Yeah.
So you reach that threshold, it's like, wait, I'm too happy.
Yeah.
Like I'm too in love. I'm too vulnerable. That's really interesting.
Which is also a crazy thought, because it's like, well, why can't you be in this? And I don't believe that everyone needs to be the biggest, baddest CEO and creative director and all of those things. If that is what you want, I wish that and hope that upon you. But I do believe that like there is still a level of happiness, a level of success, a level of achievement, a level of love that you can find that still sits slightly above what your previous expectation of that may have been. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I do think that that's a real thing. And I think that self-sabotage, I feel like I've seen honestly more times than I could count, especially like from very smart, talented folks who should be the heir apparent, should be the next, should be whatever that may be, but they find a way to stand in their own way.
Absolutely. And I'm really going to go study this more in terms of like getting so close to something that you start to self-sabotage yourself, like knowing you have something due and being like, I'm not going to turn it in.
I'm not going to do it.
I'm not going to do it.
And you're like, well, why not? You're
so close.
You're about to get the A.
Wow.
You're so close to the A.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's something that's really about it. And I think you're right. I think it's this mind thing that we have of like, maybe that's too much. Maybe it's just like, it's not supposed to be this good. I think that's another thing. Is like, it's always the like, is this too good? Like, it's too good to be true.
Right.
One of those things. Mm-hmm. And if it's too good to be true, that means that they could pull it away from you. Something can be taken away from you, right? The rug could be pulled out from under you, so to speak. But if you don't step into that, then you're good.
You're good. You're safe.
You're safe.
Jay, I can't sit here with you and not talk about Lawrence. That's such a hard pivot, but is Lawrence in the room with us right now?
Nah,
Where is he at?
Lawrence is retired.
Oh my goodness.
Lawrence is retired. He's out there reading my book somewhere, probably.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's probably just reading a copy
His life
of my
is
book,
all together.
You know
I mean, Insecure was a cultural movement, and I can't thank Issa and you and the cast and the showrunners enough. I feel like when the finale happened, I was so sad. I mean, I was happy because it was a beautiful ending, but I wanted to go where you all were going.
Yeah.
You know?
I think we felt that too. It was really interesting. Like, I think the thing that was so amazing about Insecure is that we were all happy to see these characters ride into the sunset. Like, nobody was like, I didn't get enough. Or nobody felt like, as an actor or performer, like they just needed one more season, or they just needed this character to do this. Everyone was like, nah, my character went on a journey. Like, if you see where this person started and where this person ended, like, this is a good time for us to like tap out and let them go live for another 10, 15, 20 years. And then maybe we revisit them if we could talk Issa into it. But maybe not, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I do think that like where we left them, I think was such an interesting point in life, because it is this conversation of like, oh, I'm in my 30s. I'm good. I got the job now. I got the place I want to live. I got my little relationship. I might be thinking about kids. I might not. Whatever. I'm traveling. Whatever it is, it feels like it is a time of life where we are supposed to be settled as adults. And that's where these characters all landed at. And so it feels like, oh, this is the place where we're supposed to leave them, because now they're going to go live the happy lives that we all want them to go live. And so I think we all very much felt, again, it was bitter because like we love each other. Love. My text chains are literally daily.
Wow.
With the guys, with the girls, like with different like groups, and then also individually. Like, it is very weird to not go to work with them 3 months, 4 months a year. But it's also one of the most, it's that thing like when they say like it's better to love than to not loved at all. Like, to have had that experience, even though I may miss it, even though I may wish it kept going on, even though I can also understand that like those stories ended the way they were supposed to end, and that's where we were supposed to let those characters go. The thing that I miss is the people. The thing that I miss is going to work with that group of people every single day. And I think we all feel that because we've now all gone into different situations, and some have been good for people and some have been bad for people. But we always come back to each other and we're like, damn, remember how good we had it? Like, that was so great. Like, going to work with you every single day was fun. I was never pissed off or upset or thrown off. Like, I knew you had my back and you knew I had your back. And at the end of the day, we both knew that we were here in service of Issa Rae. Like, that was the most important thing.
I mean, the thing about Lawrence, and I'm so curious on your thoughts on this, it just felt like when work wasn't going great, love was abounding.
Yeah.
When love was amazing, the work wasn't going
Yeah.
great. And it just made me think about, must something always be sacrificed? Or can, and this is me asking Jay, can you have it all? Or must something always, have to give?
It's so interesting because I think that is such a central question of those characters.
Yeah.
Of all three of those characters, by the way. Molly was killing it at work. She couldn't figure out her personal life. Right?
Wow, yes.
Like, for all three of those characters, Issa was the one who, interestingly enough, was like a little bit rocky when she stepped out on her own in work, and also rocky in a relationship. But then as like work started to take off, the relationship thing was like, okay, I'm in this thing with Nathan, but like, is this the right thing like that I'm supposed to be in? I mean, he seems like a cool dude, but like, is he my person? And I think it's so interesting that like what I love about the show is that it ended answering the question with a yes.
Yes.
Every character did get the best of both.
Yes.
They got to be the person with the person that they wanted to be with and that they loved and that was their forever person, their soulmate. And they also got to go do the job that they wanted to go do. And not that, again, like Lawrence's journey with work changed so much, but like he found himself in a position where he was thriving, where he was happy, where he was fulfilled, even though he didn't come out to be the tech CEO he thought he was going to be, right? And so I do think that it's such a great reminder and a great example of, yes, you can have both. I think the road to get both is rocky as hell.
Yeah.
Like, it ain't easy.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you got to understand that you're striving for two things at one time. And like, sometimes one thing does have to sacrifice for another thing. And sometimes another thing does have to sacrifice. But that doesn't mean that one should always sacrifice for the other. But yeah, I believe in both.
Yeah.
I believe in both. 100%.
When you're walking down the street and someone says, Lawrence, do you turn? Does your head turn? Or are you like, no, they're not talking to me?
Am I in a rush?
Brisk walk.
I would say 90% of the time I turn.
Okay.
95 maybe percent of the time I turn.
Okay.
And I usually always just say, what's up? And then I keep it moving.
And what would you say are the biggest differences between Jay and Lawrence?
Ooh. I think Lawrence was way more in his feelings. Way more in his feelings.
He's a lover boy.
He was a little lover boy, but I don't think he knew he was.
Yeah.
Right?
The emotions could not emote.
I don't think he knew he was.
Yeah.
And so I think that like Yvonne used to always say this thing of like, use your words. Like Lawrence needs to use his words. And I think of like, there was this scene once where like he had driven to Issa's apartment and he was sitting outside the apartment and he was about to text her, but he didn't text her. And I think of things like that where I'm like, man, if you would have just sent that text, we could have, I mean, I'm glad he didn't because then the show would have ended then. But like, you know what I mean? If he would have sent that text, like he would have answered so many questions for himself in that moment. and for her also. But I do think that like, I think Lawrence's superpower, I think in a lot of ways, was his commitment, especially to Issa. And in that commitment, understanding that what she really wanted was the best for him, that he couldn't find himself because he was so in his feelings, he wouldn't let himself see who the best version of him was supposed to be.
Wow.
I think I really, really think that like his commitment to her is actually his superpower because it really unlocked the person that he was supposed to become by not having her and understanding that she only wanted the best for him when he didn't have her. Like, I think that really unlocked him to become the person he's supposed to be.
You once said, I was scared to go play Lawrence. I didn't want to be vulnerable, but it brought something out in me as an actor. It made me expand and grow. So I guess, was vulnerability what Lawrence taught you, or what would you say?
Yeah, I would say for sure. I mean, I definitely think it was, again, just also processing. Like, it's so easy to be in your own head and process your actions in someone else's text and someone else's phone call and someone else's email and someone else's like actions. It's so easy to just be in your head and assume. But what I think is really interesting about Lawrence is like his communication level, like how his communication grew, right? And by understanding that he wasn't communicating what was in his head and then realizing he needed to start communicating, like his world opened up in a completely different way. And that's the big thing that I take away from him. There's definitely the vulnerability and definitely like the fact that he was always in his feelings. But I think that again leads back to he was always in his feelings because he didn't know how to communicate. He was just living life between his ears. And once he figured that out and understood that a little bit better and was able to like speak up for himself, I think that's when you start to see his life change quite a bit. And to me, that's one of the biggest things I took away. Because I started looking at like, man, we were getting so many arguments on that show because we would be like, nah, she wrong because she blah, 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 blah. No, he did it because he da, 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 da. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy. If we're doing this and we're creating the characters, and Prentice and Issa used to talk about this, if they argued about it in the writer's room, then it definitely was going to be in the show because that meant that the audience would argue about it, which meant that it was something, a conversation or something that was authentic, that was real, and that needed to be talked about in some way. And going through that experience really helped me understand, as a Capricorn, stubborn only child, that my experience is not the lone experience, especially if you're in a relationship. That person has a point of view of every action you make as well. And you may not agree, but you can at least understand or at least communicate, right? And then go from there. To me, that's what my whole journey with Lawrence was.
I got a few more Lawrence questions. Is that okay? My favorite scene is when Lawrence says, "This night made me happy." And then Issa says, "You made me happy, and I'm not ready for the night to end." Do you have a favorite Lawrence Issa scene?
I think that is by far the best episode of our show. I think them meeting up at Alta Adams, I think her falling when she walks in the room, it's so like who their relationship is.
Totally.
She's trying to put on, but he's like, I know the real you. So it immediately breaks the tension. And then they get in the back of the Uber and they have like, they have their fun with the woman who's driving. And she's like, you better put a ring on that shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they kind of are poking with each other. Like, I think, and then as they walk through that art fair and they talk to each other, you really see the growth that they've had between the two of them. And you really see how much they still do love each other, even at the restaurant too. And then, I think when I think of that episode, like, the end of that episode is like when we met them before they were having sex and then they were both in that episode they make love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like by the end of that episode you're like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be like when you're in love with somebody.
Yeah.
And like when you're like, this is my person. And to me, like that episode encapsulates so much of who they are as people in their relationship and like their qualities as soulmates.
Oh, it's
my favorite episode of the show. And I'm biased, but it's my favorite episode.
Cheers to that. It's so good. I love this quote, and I had to write this down because I was like, do you still feel this way? You said, I love being miserable at 4:30 in the morning when the alarm goes off because by the time I get in the chair on set at 5:30, I've got a big grin on my face.
Yeah.
What motivates you?
Best job in the world.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. For me, it's the best job in the world. I get to create. I get to go I have, where the wood at?
Right.
I have had amazing work experiences in this industry. I've worked with some amazing, amazing humans behind the camera, in front of the camera, movie stars, writers, producers, like across the board, gaffers, makeup folks, hair folks. Like I've been very blessed to work with some really amazing people. I could probably count on one hand the amount of people where I'd be like, I ain't never got to see them again. Like very few instances of that. And I think when you get up and do that and you do it with people you love and everybody has a common goal and you are excited about the work and you also realize that like this isn't the end all be all. This is just a moment in life. And if you're present and you're enjoying that moment in life, then just mine as much out of it as you can and don't make it miserable for yourself or for other people. And I don't know, when I get up in the morning, like 4:30 hurts. Like I ain't gonna lie, 5 o'clock hurt. It hurts all the way up until 7:30, 8 o'clock for me. All of that is painful. But when I get to work, I'm so grateful for that experience. And I know what my day is going to be. And I know who I am when I show up to work. And I don't allow people, like, I'm not going to let you come in here and like ruin everybody else's day. Like, if you are in a moment, I fully respect that. You're having big feelings, as we say to my daughter, then cool. You can have your big feelings. And you should process those big feelings. But that doesn't mean that everybody else has to have a miserable moment or day or time because of it. Because we can go over here and have a good time and work and do what we need to do while you process what you need to process. And I think like that is how I like to show up to work. And so I've been very fortunate to still go to work with a smile on my face every day.
You're expecting baby number 2.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, what's going through your mind? How has fatherhood changed you as a person?
I don't know. I think I'm still too in the thick of it to even really be able to process it all.
That's fair.
You know, I think you're, again, still just so in it. I think I would say patience is probably which is something that I definitely needed. I think that's something that you realize you got to have. And I'll say the other thing is like when you become a parent, and me and like a bunch of my friends who are also parents talk about this all the time, but you like look at a baby, you look at a little kid and you're looking at them and you're talking to them and you're realizing as you're doing it, oh, I don't want you to have the dysfunction that I have. Right? Like
you must evolve.
You like, I don't want you to have my dysfunction. So let me find another way to do this for you and have this conversation with you and explain this to you or get you through this or whatever it may be. And it's really it's wild. Like it's just a mirror back at you all day long. All of it. If your kid rolls their eyes, that's because you roll your eyes.
Oh, that's wild.
Right. Like they learned it from you.
They did not know how to do that.
If they put their hand on their hip when they talking to you, that comes from you. Like it is, if they yell, that's because you yell at them. Like it is such a clear reminder of like, this little person is soaking up every single, billions of data points are running through their brain synapses at a time. And they are processing the world around them. And you are teaching them what life is and what the world is. Man, one of my best friends, Oklahoma, grew up together. Jason Parker, shout out to you. Jason has an older boy, 2 younger daughters. And I remember him telling me this beautiful thing. He told his brother, his son, you have to understand that as their older brother, their male relationships will be influenced by how you treat them and how I treat them as their father. So if you're short with them or dismissive with them because you're a teenage boy and whatever, like they are going to think that that is okay from teenage boys when they get there. And so and what he was ultimately saying is that like we are such a influence for who these kids become, and we don't even realize it. And so to me, that's the biggest thing that I take away is I'm always like, when she does something, I'm like, oh, do I do that? Because if I do that, then I need to back up because I don't want you doing that.
Right. She's a mini mirror.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Jay, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn?
I might still be in it.
Mm-hmm.
I might still be in it. I might definitely still be in it. I definitely think something that hit me late was like, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that goes back to curiosity. It's like, if you know everything, again, what are we doing? Like, it's okay to not know some stuff. And it's okay to be like, I don't know. And it's okay to be like, I don't know, but I'll figure it out.
Right.
Or it's okay to be like, I don't know, and I don't think I want to know.
Right.
Like, that's also okay. And I think that took me a minute. I also think the lesson of like, the only person you need to prove anything to is you. Like, you're the only person that you need to be worried about. One of my homeboys told me this, actually, another really good friend of mine, one of my boys I grew up with in Oklahoma, shout out to Joseph Bojang.
Hey, Joseph.
I ask my daughter this every day. I'm like, are you proud? She swam for the first time. Super happy. High fives all around. Big hug, kiss. Are you proud of yourself? Because you need to understand that you need to be proud of yourself as well, and not just seek other people being proud of you, because then that turns into a people pleaser. Nothing wrong with a people pleaser. But I want to make sure that when I create something, or as my daughter is growing up, that she has to be proud of the work that she does. I have to be proud of the work that I do. And then after that, it's not mine anymore. The culture owns it. Like, culture could do whatever they want with it. It's yours. You take it and you process it how you want to process it. You meme it how you want to meme it. You soak in it. You whatever it is, like, you fully take it and you own it, because that's what it was made for. But you can't seek validation from others, right? You have to be like, I'm cool here. This is the thing I'm doing, and I'm happy with this thing that I did. From there, however people want to process it, cool. That's it. And you can't be attached to the outcome.
Are you proud? I think that I'm going to start asking myself, is it enough? Are you proud?
Are you proud?
Are you proud? Wow. Because, I mean, as someone who, like you said, you're creating, detaching from the outcome, I mean, that feels...
It's hard.
It feels very hard.
Because everything is results driven.
Absolutely.
Everything is like
the reviews.
Measurable, or reviews, or
Right.
numbers, or stars, or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Down to like how good of a backseater you are when you in a ride share. Like, everything is like, you know what I'm saying? Like, everything is measured in some way.
Yeah.
But I don't think we necessarily track how that measurement like creates mediocrity. Because what matters is like that you feel proud about the thing that you did, and you feel that it's fire. That don't mean you can't take notes from people. That doesn't mean it's the best thing it's supposed to be. That doesn't mean it can't get better. But if you're proud of it, then that means that you put in the work, you did the research, you did everything that you were supposed to do to make it what you wanted it to be. So I'm a big believer in that.
Jay, as my cousin, can you give me some dating advice? It is really rough
That's what everybody
in these
keeps
single
saying.
streets. What would you, just one gem.
I don't know.
Please don't say be yourself.
No, I would never say nothing that
Please.
corny.
Okay.
No, I have homeboys who ask me about this. I have homegirls who ask me about this.
Maybe you should be a matchmaker.
No, I have matched a couple that got married though, and I was their officiant at their wedding.
That sounds like a really high success rate.
It's tough, man, because with social media, like we all get to wear these masks, right? Like, we all get to like show the person that we want people to see that we are. And it's like, that's cool. But like, when you get home and you get behind the doors and like we in there for a minute, you're not the social media, that's not the same person anymore. And you start to peel away the layers and really understand somebody. And some people stay in their persona and stay on that mask, and some people don't. And I think that goes to online dating, that goes to Facebook, Twitter, Tinder, all of the things, X, whatever they call it now. I find in an age where like everyone I know and like all my friends and even like folks that I'm tangentially like connected to, everyone wants to be their realest, most authentic self.
Mm.
And they should. But it seems that like dating culture is not that.
That's wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
It seems like dating culture
it's a little bit of a performance.
is a performance. And
Right.
it's like, well, if you want to be your realest, authentic self when you go to the park or you go to a show or you're at work or whatever it is, then why it feels like on both sides, I'm throwing my boys under there too, it feels like there's a bit of a performance and everyone's not getting their most authentic on that side.
Okay, so that's interesting. So I guess, because I know people who don't want to follow people on Instagram when they start dating them for that very reason. They're like, I actually don't want that version of you. I want to get to know you. And I kind of agree with that, but maybe even being more intentional in terms of who are you really versus like who are you showing up as online?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what that is, right? Because I think that's what that is.
That's good advice.
Because the difference is like if you were, if none of that existed, you would come home and you would say, damn, work was hard today. I had to deal with this dude. And then he came in. So I was like, you know what? Let me dial it back and I'm going to be this person because I'm in the office and I'm going to do this thing and I know what is expected of me in this space. But when you're home, you get to be the most authentic with the person you're having that conversation with and you're telling them how your day went, right?
Yeah.
Well, now what we've created is that like, if you're not going home with someone and then you're having this work persona and this social media persona, the problem is you don't know how to like peel those layers back and just be with your person.
It's two performers talking to,
it's a lot.
It's the Matrix.
It's hard.
That's good. Jay, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Thank you.
Should we toast?
Let's do it.
Our money's on the way. Amen. What an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Spotify for producing this episode. Remember, embrace your story, celebrate your wins, and keep pushing boundaries. For more unfiltered conversations with Black culture shifters, subscribe to CultureCon Uncut on Spotify. And if you're feeling inspired, tell a friend to tell a friend.